This is a short video on the Niphal verb pattern for strong and weak verbs. Now, in the last section of Futato, I showed a video on verb patterns, or stem patterns, and this was one of the slides, the Niphal pattern. And by way of review, in the perfect or in the participle, the Niphal will prefix a noon and an I-class vowel, either ni or something else that's I-class, hence Niphal. And in the perfect, the theme vowel will be A-class patak, so niktal. And in the participle, it'll be A-class but a comets, niktal. All right, so that's the only difference here in the perfect and the participle for the Niphal. Ni prefix, patak with the perfect, again third masculine singular, and participle masculine singular is the comets. The imperfect, you had your normal set of prefixed consonants followed by a vowel pattern. So here's yod, that's one of our normal imperfect prefixes, followed by hirik, dagesh in the next consonant, which is the first consonant of the lemma, and comets. So hirik, dagesh, comets underneath the prefix. So that was an easy tell for the imperfect in the Niphal. The imperative, the infinitive construct, the infinitive absolute is basically the same, except you have a prefixed he. So here we have hi, and then hirik, dagesh, comets. This is what will distinguish this prefix he with I-class from like a hifil. Hifils don't have hirik, dagesh, comets. Niphals do. And of course, if this last vowel, instead of a tsera, if it's a long O vowel, it's going to be infinitive absolute. So that was the Niphal, again, just by way of review. Now, in this chapter of Futato, we had more Niphal discussion, but with weak verbs. And so I wanted to summarize the strong verb, like we just did here, and then go to weak verb patterns. So here we are. We'll talk about the perfect and the participle. Here's what the strong verb does that we just reviewed. Niktal, patak, niktal, comets for participle. Now, in first gutturals, I just want you to see that the patterns are actually going to be consistent here. We've got prefix noon plus I-class. It's just that instead of ni, we have ne because we are next to a guttural. And gutturals will not take these normal schwas. They're going to take compound schwas. And you're going to have the I-class vowel correspond to the compound schwa underneath the first guttural. But you know, you don't have to remember all that about gutturals. Just think N I-class and then a lemma. Okay, N I-class. This would look different if it was cal imperfect. Okay, so we're still going with N I-class. So that's consistent, N I-class and patak. Right there it is in the perfect. But with a participle, it's N I-class comets. Again, very consistent with your strong verb. When it comes to first noon, look at our form. Here we have ni, N-I, ni, N-I-class, and a patak. Now we can see from the dagesh, we have a dagesh in this consonant. After a full vowel sound, we know that we've had noon assimilation happen. The noon of the lemma has assimilated into the tzade here. So this is very, very consistent. The only difference is that you lose that first consonant of the lemma, that noon, because it assimilates. So in the perfect, ni, patak. Participle, ni, comets. Again, very consistent. Now with the first yod, we get something different. Here we have the noon prefix, but we do not get I-class vowels. This is the only time in the Niphal that you're not going to get that I-class vowel. So we have no, no, and then we have patak and comets for perfect and participle respectively. So the only time that you've had something like the O, okay, this vav, holem vav, in a prefix situation has been with the Hifil, and specifically the Hifil imperfect. You would get the no, but then it would be followed by typically I class. Okay, so there is a little bit of a difference here, but again, my advice to you when you come across noon, and we're only talking about the letter noon here, noon with your holem vav here, is to ask yourself, okay, does this vav with the next two consonants, is that a known first yod lemma? Because we know with some first yod lemmas that first yod was an original vav, or will take the form of a vav in some forms. And if it is, if you know, okay, vav shin bet, okay, yashav, that's a first yod lemma that I know. If that's the case, and you have no here, think nifal. Okay, think nifal. Now with third hay forms, again, we've got some, consistency, but some inconsistency. We have our ni prefix in our perfect and our participle, but with the perfect, it's comets hay, and with the participle, it's segol hay. That you're more or less just going to have to memorize, because usually we're used to seeing this comets here in the participle column right here. But it's going to switch up with third hay. And, again, they're postulated reasons for this. Rather than bore you with that or confuse you with that, just know that with third hay lemmas, gala, that you're going to have this switcheroo going on. Now the nifal pattern with the imperfect. Okay, strong verb up here at the top in black. Prefix, hirik, dagish, comets. Now with first guttural, the guttural is not going to take a dagish. So what always happens when the guttural will not take a dagish, the vowel before it will lengthen. So instead of hirik, we have tsere, no dagish, and comets. Okay, now usually to this point, I've been saying things like, okay, you've got that imperfect prefix, tsera. That's going to be the sign of a cal imperfect of a first yod lemma. Okay, we're not going to say that anymore. And you could tell that isn't the case here, because in the cal imperfect for the first yod lemmas, you'd have tsera, tsera. Okay, here you don't have tsera, tsera. You have tsera and then a discernible lemma, and the first one is a guttural. So you should just train yourself to know that when you see that first guttural and you see a tsera here, you know that that's lengthened. That should be a hirak. And if that's a hirak, then it's going to lengthen for a reason. And the reason is going to be it didn't take a dagesh. So hirak, dagesh, comets. Again, that would be the way to remember what you're looking at here. Now, first noon, he did not give you, Futado did not give you any forms, so we're not going to worry about that. First yod, this will be very easy to recognize. Here's your yod prefix, and hirak, dagesh, comets. Same pattern. It's just that the first yod of the lemma will change to a vav, but you have a discernible lemma there. And then third hey, consistency again. Prefix, hirak, dagesh, comets. It's a nifal. Now, as far as imperative, infinitive construct, and infinitive absolute go, again, in the strong verb, we had a prefixed hey, followed by hirak, dagesh, comets. So in first guttural, we're going to have that prefixed hey, and it's going to lengthen. It's going to lengthen because the guttural will not take the dagesh. So lengthening, and there's our comets. First noon, he didn't give you any. First yod, very consistent, prefix hey, hirak, dagesh, comets. It's a hifil. It's a hifil infinitive construct or an imperative. These can be, you're going to have the same form for imperatives and infinitives for all of these weak verb types. When we get to third hey, though, we get a little bit of oddity again. The imperative will be consistent, prefix hey, hirak, dagesh, comets, with Sarah, okay? That's an imperative. It could also be an infinitive absolute. Notice right here, even though I have it in black, this form and this form are identical. So when you see, you have a third hey lemma, you have hey prefix, hirak, dagesh, comets, that's a nifal. It's either an imperative or infinitive construct because, it's either an imperative or an infinitive absolute because the infinitive construct will end with ot. And that's expected because you typically, your third hey lemmas, when they're in infinitive construct form, they'll take that oat ending. Okay, that hey will drop and you'll get the T. Right? So prefix hey, Herrick, Dagish, comets, and then your oat ending. That is classic infinitive construct ending. You know, an oat ending can only be one of three things. It's either a plural, feminine plural noun, it's a feminine plural participle, or it's an infinitive construct. That's all it's going to be. That's the end of this video.